In this week's EV news, no more flashing lights, I promise. New green NCAP ratings cast doubt over the environmental credentials of many vehicles. ZipCharge announced a new modular EV charging station solution. Renault weighs up its options for separating its EV business, including potentially an IPO. And Gridserve opened their second electric forecourt in Norwich. Welcome back to another EV news episode, and before we get started, I definitely have an apology to make. The background lighting in the previous video was way off the mark. I knew it was a little bit off when I was editing, but I thought I would just about get away with it. It would just about be passable. Turns out I was wrong, as many of you pointed out. It's gone, and it won't be returning. We'll stick to solid colours like we have here, which seems to work a little bit better. Thanks to those of you that provided feedback, at least those of you that did it in a constructive way rather than the one or two who spat their dummy out and had a good rant at me in the comments. I do get it wrong sometimes, and I am still getting to grips with the setup, but I am listening to your feedback and taking it on board. Once again, I'd like to ask you to click the like button if you want to see more of this type of content, and if you're new here, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe as well. Trying really hard to get back in the swing of things, so let's show that algorithm who's boss, shall we? First up this week is a story from Auto Express. As always, there's links in the description to anything I cover here, which looks at data coming out of Green NCAP, the sustainability offshoot of Euro NCAP, who are the crash test people that we all know and love, unless you drive a Renault Zoe. Green NCAP have just launched a new life cycle assessment programme which looks at whole life emissions of vehicles, and it makes for some interesting, albeit questionable, reading. I know some of you are going to have some very strong opinions on this in the comments. Definitely let me have them, because I think the data here could be interpreted in all sorts of different ways. And I don't know if there's a little bit of creative license being used here for one reason or another. Green NCAP, the sustainability offshoot of independent crash test body Euro NCAP, has launched a life cycle assessment programme designed to help consumers choose the most eco-friendly cars. A total of 61 cars have been assessed for the first phase of the LCA under Euro NCAP's Green NCAP banner, with an electric Fiat 500 coming out as the car with the smallest whole-life CO2 footprint. However, in contrast to its crash test results, Green NCAP is not offering consumers an easy-to-compare star rating system. Instead, it is providing a best and worst case range for each model, giving an indication of its eco-performance. There are two key rating elements that make up the Green NCAP LCA results. One rating is for lifetime greenhouse gas emissions, which is an indication of how much CO2 a new car will produce from its manufacture through a lifetime of use based on 240,000 kilometres, so about 150,000 miles, of driving over 16 years to recycling at the end of its life. The second rating is primary energy demand, which calculates the total amount of energy required over a similar cycle of manufacture, usage and recycling, irrespective of how that energy is derived, be it from renewable energy, fossil fuels or nuclear. Interestingly, in terms of its total demand for energy, a diesel Skoda Octavia estate has the lowest primary energy demand rate of all of the cars so far assessed. Now this is where this gets a little bit iffy, doesn't it? According to Green NCAP, consumers should attach the same importance to PED as they do to greenhouse gas emissions. PED represents the sum of all primary energy extracted from nature to provide the transportation, including coal, oil, natural gas, hydro energy, wind, waste, solar and nuclear energy. As energy supplies are scarce and valuable, they should be utilised wisely and the efficiency of all processes in a vehicle's life cycle maximised, it says. It sounds a little bit to me like you want these figures to say a certain thing and therefore you're making the parameters fit that. Definitely got my sceptical hat on with this one, I think. As you might expect, NCAP's results show that a large electric vehicle needs a lot more energy than a small one, and that an electric vehicle in general may have similar or even higher primary energy demand than a comparable conventional car. Not sure that's what you'd expect, but okay. For all types of powertrain, the highest PED demand is during the usage phase, so it's important to reduce consumption of fuel, whether electricity or petrol or diesel, as much as possible, the organisation says. But if the emissions from fuel in usage is the most important, then surely, unless you're literally running the entire grid on coal, an electric car would be cleaner. And that's, that's fairly obvious and fairly well proven, so I'm struggling here. The best and worst case scenarios given for each car reflect different driving styles, ambient conditions, as well as the energy mix prevalent in different countries. For example, the same battery electric vehicle may provide low greenhouse gas scores in Sweden, where it's likely to be charged exclusively from renewable power, but across its lifetime the same car could generate more greenhouse gas than a petrol equivalent in Poland, where most electricity is generated from coal. The organisation states, whilst it's true that electric powertrains are highly efficient and the ability to recuperate kinetic energy mitigates the energy losses, the impact of mass remains obvious. The LCA analysis also highlights increased contributions of the production of a heavier chassis, bigger high voltage batteries, and the manufacturing of more electric components like cables and power circuits to the estimated greenhouse gas output. Now, I think this makes for quite interesting reading. There's an awful lot to it and you'll spend quite a long time delving into the facts and figures to draw your own conclusions. There's a link to the Green NCAP website in the description if you'd like to take a look. I'm struggling with the idea that a diesel Skoda Octavia could be considered to be the greenest vehicle that they've assessed so far, but I do agree with their assertions that a huge 3-ton SUV is going to have a bigger impact on the environment than a city car, regardless of its fuel type. I mean, that's a fairly obvious conclusion to come to. But I definitely feel like there's some heavy man maths at play here in favour of the combustion engine. Volvo, and therefore Polestar, published some very interesting reports on life cycle analysis that weren't anywhere near as damning as this, and that they were making fair comparisons between their own petrol and electric models. But still, the Green NCAP's there for you to read, digest, and come to your own conclusions on. And I'm sure by the time this video goes out, someone will have deeply debunked it all anyway, but I thought it was worth bringing to your attention. Next up, ZipCharge have announced a new modular EV charging station. And your first question is probably, who on earth are ZipCharge? Well, they are that firm that make those power banks for EVs, the suitcase-sized batteries that you can use in an emergency to charge your EV. I've never quite understood the product myself because there's got to be a limited actual real-world application for humping these things about to give you, 4 kilowatt hours, I think they were. I'm not really sure where it fits, but okay. This GoHub product they've come out with seems to be a real-world application for it. It's a charging station, but not as you know it. It's actually a collection of these EV power banks that you can check out, wheel it over to your car, do your charging, and put it back when it's done so it can get topped up. ZipCharge have announced a new EV charging solution designed to accelerate the growth of the UK's charging infrastructure called the GoHub. The new product is a fixed station containing up to 10 of the brand's portable Go electric car chargers, and ZipCharge claims that the GoHub is 3 times cheaper than a typical level 2 unit. Now I don't actually see how that's possible. You've got all these units with all these batteries and you tell me that's cheaper than a typical level 2 charger, which actually is a fairly cheap thing to buy. Yeah, I don't get it, but okay. The GoHub is also 3 times faster to install, which ZipCharge hopes will quicken the growth of the country's charging network. The firm offers a subscription service for EV owners to use the product, but customers can also rent a station or purchase one outright. The smallest GoHub contains 5 portable charging banks, with the larger unit housing 10. The small suitcase-sized Go power banks contained within the GoHub are produced from reused batteries and feature a retractable handle for portability. Users can plug in the Go's charging port to provide up to 20 miles of extra range in 30 minutes, with a 4 kilowatt hour charge costing £1. The GoHub can also be specified with a mobile device charger, a rainwater harvester, and Wi-Fi hotspot connectivity. Along with a wind turbine to produce renewable energy, electric bike and scooter charging capability is also offered as an option. ZipCharge co-founder Jonathan Carrier predicts that the GoHub will replace standard home chargers by the end of the decade due to the product's versatility. We have the bold ambition to deploy 100,000 GoHubs globally by 2030 to support EV charging, local grid resiliency and energy democracy, he said. Now, joking apart, right, part of me actually quite likes this idea. You don't need to run power to every parking space. You just have a pool of these power bank things available, which can grow as the demand grows. Part of me thinks it's absolutely bonkers. You're cycling more batteries when actually just providing a power supply would do the same job. Can you really see this becoming the way that people charge their car? You're going to wheel a battery suitcase to your car, plug it in for half an hour for a whole 4 kilowatt hours? I'm not so sure. Much like the ZipCharge Go itself, I think the Go Hub is an interesting product, but it's got limited appeal, hasn't it? I do wonder what the response to it would be on Dragon's Den. What do you think?
I can be very, very kind or very, very nasty. I'll be nasty first. It's a fantastic product, you're going to make a fortune. Or I can be kind and say, it's a complete and utter waste of time and money. There's no margin in it, there's no money in it, it's not going to sell. I'm out.
I'm sure you'll have some really good opinions on ZipCharge and the Go Hub. Definitely get into the comments with it. Do you reckon we'll be seeing these things everywhere in the not so distant future? I'm not convinced. Next up, Renault are trying to work out what the future holds for their EV business and whether they should split it out into its own separate entity or not, which might even include an IPO for that new organisation. French car maker Renault said that all options were on the table for separating its electric vehicle business, including a possible public listing in the second half of 2023. Renault's finance chief said any plans were subject to approval from its alliance partner Nissan, but made it clear the Japanese car maker was in the loop as Renault weighs up its options. Renault has been pushing ahead with plans to split its electric vehicle and combustion engine businesses as it seeks to catch up with rivals such as Tesla and Volkswagen in the race to cleaner driving. The news came as Renault posted better than expected revenue for the first quarter, as higher prices and rising electric vehicle sales largely offset the impact of the war in Ukraine and an ongoing global shortage of semiconductors. And this is very interesting stuff, kinda. A lot of people speculate that the legacy car makers are deliberately dragging their heels with EVs in order to continue to profit from internal combustion. But this type of move definitely makes strides towards proving that wrong, I think. If their EV-only arm is going to stand on its own feet and be profitable, then they'll need to take it very seriously indeed. I'd love to see Renault up their game and do something like that shakes the market up a bit. Use the Dacia brand to launch a bunch of more affordable EVs. And maybe having a separate entity to keep profitable would be the incentive they'd need if they were trying to build a new business unit and keep the shareholders happy. Who knows? And finally, on the 21st of April, Gridserve opened their second electric forecourt. This time in Norwich and with a radically different design to the original flagship site in Braintree. Dubbed the compact electric forecourt, the site takes up 50% less space than the original, yet packs in even more ultra-rapid chargers. I was there at the launch event and it is seriously impressive. To find out more, if you haven't seen it already, do check out my video where all will be revealed in detail. But that's all we've got time for this week. As always, a huge thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time for more EV news.